So as we clock up episode 7 of Sunday Sessions, we are very lucky to have with us the one and only Carl Fox.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. We've been trying to get you here for a while.
It's been a long time coming.
We've cancelled, we've rescheduled, we finally got you, so thank you for being here.
That's all right.
And travelling all this way.
Yeah.
So for those of you that have seen Carl's work and that know of Carl, so Carl, your work. Okay, so this is where I need clarification. So your work, well, it is marquetry.
Yes.
So what would you call yourself if that is your practice in your medium?
I'm a combination of things, I guess. I work with leather and wood in marquetry techniques, so I would be a marquetry artist, I guess.
Okay.
Or a leather artist, or a
Okay.
leather and wood artist, craftsperson.
And obviously that's quite a niche medium to work with.
Yeah.
Like how did you find that your kind of skills were going to excel using that medium? Like,
It's been a really long time coming, I think. I used to be a hairdresser, which,
yes, this is something we have in common.
kindred. And the whole of my career I spent doing, like my spare time, I was doing courses in everything from like textiles and upholstery and furniture restoration. I did everything, so I kind of knew that I enjoyed the craft side of things and the furniture side of things.
Did this desire to learn more and acquire more skills, is this an ADHD trait, or is this just something
Not
that
sure.
is...
I left school pretty early because I just wanted to get out of home basically. So I knew I wanted to do something creative, but that kind of meant I couldn't really go to university. I had to get out and work. So I ended up being a hairdresser because it was one of the only things you could do as an apprentice creatively in the mid-90s. So.
And also as a young queer kid as well.
Exactly.
It was somewhere where that you could be accepted.
Yeah.
It was
So
okay and embraced to be there.
I kind of grew up in a small village, and the next less small village had a Tony and Guy, and then I became an apprentice at Tony and Guy. So I knew that I wanted to do something artistically, but because I got into that job, I kind of got I got in the midst of studying my apprenticeship, and then once that was done, I still had this need to go out and create things and make things and use my hands in a slightly different way. So all these courses started probably when I was about 20 and 21, and I'd kind of done my first year being qualified as a hairdresser, and I just wanted to kind of use any time that I had to learn everything I could about the...
Obviously had a bit of cash as well to kind of pour into...
Not really! No, not really. I look back at it now and I'm like, how did I actually do it?
Okay. Well, this would be interesting to chat about actually, because obviously people that don't have those resources that want to do that.
Yeah, I read a lot. I read a lot, and I think in when I was really young, I went to charity shops a lot and got my materials and textiles from that. So I'd buy cheap clothes and tear them up, resew them. It wasn't. I don't think I was actively going out and being like, okay, well, maybe I'll want to do textiles in the long run. I think it started off as learning things as a hobby. I read a lot. I was always a kid that had his head in. I was fascinated with archaeology, so I loved the idea of making things. So I loved to put my head in a book and kind of reading everything I could. Because actually, I mean, at that time you didn't really have the internet at your disposal, and it wasn't on your phones and stuff like that. So, and actually, because I was a newly qualified hairdresser with no money, you could get a library card. So I used to go to the library and get all these books out and study crafts basically. And kind of, I spent the next, when I was a hairdresser for 26 years, so I spent the next 26 years doing things along those lines. I was always studying different things and kind of avid hobbyist, I guess. And then the pandemic came, and I got furloughed because I was a hairdresser, and we couldn't go into work. And I wanted to make something for a friend, and I'd never used leather before, and ordered some leather off of Amazon, I think it was.
So you didn't have a few cheeky scraps of leather lying around there?
No leather clothing to speak of to rip up. But no, I got some awful leather from Amazon, and it was the first time I'd used it. And
Actual leather or pleather?
It was actual leather. I mean, I think it was probably ripped off a sofa somewhere, but
Right.
but it was the first time I'd used leather as a material, and just completely fell in love with it.
What did you create in that first instance?
It speaks to the pandemic. Really. It was so. Do you remember when you started wearing your masks? They rub because you weren't used to them. The little strings would rub.
Yeah.
And I just made a little clip that you could kind of had little poppers on it, and it would hold it off the ears.
Okay.
So it was really simple. It was like a strip of leather, which I was really proud of. But from that, I taught myself saddlery and traditional leatherworking techniques.
Because it's quite remarkable. For obviously, I know you,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that the transition from kind of ending your career or saying goodbye to your career as a hairdresser and just picking up a whole new career that you had kind of introduced yourself to, educated yourself
Yeah.
in, and now you're creating these incredibly intricate and detailed pieces, like textile sculptures that almost look impossible to form. And you've done it.
It's just been a complete combination of everything that I've learned from. I love furniture. I love furniture design. I've read everything I can about mid-century design and modernist and
And
brutalist.
is that something that you've also kind of turned your hand to as well, like furniture design? Have you made
I've done it all. So I mean, I carried on being a hairdresser for a couple of years, I guess. And when we first went back, when we were allowed to go back to work, there wasn't really anyone coming into central London. So I'd sit at the shampoo basins and I'd be doing sewing and making bits and pieces, and eventually designed my own bag as an accessory. Well, I was doing accessories at that time, and designed my own bag, and that got picked up by Forbes Israel. So ended up being in Forbes magazine overseas, and then from that I went for a bursary with the Worshipful Leather Sellers and Cockpit Studios, which is quite famous.
In
Deptford.
Holborn or Deptford? Okay.
In Deptford, so it's quite famous.
We know
Adam,
who's no longer there.
Who's no longer there. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing team, and they give amazing opportunities to grasp people across the whole industry. And I managed to get myself a studio there, but by going in the studio, you had access to what's called the Leather Hub, which is it's sponsored by the Worshipful Leather Sellers, but it's actually got all the industrial machines that you wouldn't necessarily be able to either afford or have at home because they're too big. And it had a splitter, which is a machine that takes the leather down thinner, so it gets it to the right sort of thickness that I would need to be able to do marquetry.
Right.
And I'd always been
So
fascinated
that
with
kind
marquetry.
of basically shaves the back off it.
Yeah, it takes off the back basically, so you have to take it all down and figure out how thick you want it to be, and it'll do that. But it meant I had access to that, and weirdly, I'd actually fallen in love with marquetry when I was about 8 years old, which is a weird thing to fall in love with when you're 8 years old. But I had read a book about Tutankhamun, and one of the earliest bits of marquetry was a pair of shoes in Tutankhamun's tomb, and I loved them. And I knew through everything else that I'd done that if I had access to these machines, I would be able to move more into the interiors art and design phase of my leatherworking, and I wanted to move into marquetry because it was something that I felt like I could kind of really enjoy, get behind for like the rest of my career, and it's a bit of a vintage heritage technique that is kind of coming back into itself again now. So there are obviously wood marquetry people out there, and there's some people that do amazing leather marquetry, but I really wanted to combine leather, which I love as a material, and also wood, and then created my own little techniques, and here we are.
Oh, indeed.
So,
and obviously we have some of Carl's work on display here.
you do?
You're also, you've got collaborations coming up, you've got work going off to various exhibitions and shows later on this year.
Yeah, it's been busy. It's been really busy.
What's in store for you this year?
So I stopped hairdressing about a year ago, and that kind of gave me a real opportunity to throw myself at this.
So some studio in the back garden.
I built you can call it a shed, it's not a shed. It's a beautiful, lovely home studio, which is it's been life changing really. So I moved out of Cockpit and went there. My work has changed hugely in the last year or so.
Do you still have access to the same kind of tools that you did at Cockpit?
Yeah, I can go back and use that.
Okay.
So it's a really nice community there. There's quite a few leather workers there, so you can give them a little call, or Cockpit will be fine with me going in there as well. But yeah, my work's changed massively because I've had that time to kind of really get into it. So I guess from the outside it looks like I've been doing it for a couple of years, but actually it's been a whole lifetime of learning really.
Yeah.
And recently, probably about 6 months ago now, I got my scholarship with the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust. Thank you very much, which meant that I could go off and study with masters in both art and craft to kind of progress my practice and take it in a not completely new direction. It's going to still be my work, but it's given me both skills that I wouldn't have been able to do unless I'd actually had some sort of formal training, which obviously I've been self-taught. And it's kind of, I think before, if I look at it now, I was very much a crafts person, whereas I was a crafts person that knew that these craft skills could be used in an artistic way, whereas because of this training, it's changing the way that I think about my work a lot more as well. So I can definitely see the aesthetic of my work changing quite quickly, which is great.
Do you have any? Are you mentored at all? Do you have anybody that you work quite closely with?
Yeah, so
To guide you.
my scholarship with the Queen Elizabeth scholarship is you basically propose your plan of what you want to do to change your practice, basically, and what you would like to explore within your processes and things like that. I wanted to move into more of a sculptural forms, so rather than having 2D flat panels, it would be more movement and shape where you could actually do marquetry around a form, basically.
Okay.
And in a crafts person kind of way, I was looking at steam bending, so traditional steam bending of wood. You would take a wood and heat it and mold it to a form. So I have a mentor trainer who he is I hope I don't get this wrong, he's an RCA sculptor, so he was trained at the RCA, and his name is Abdullah Nafisi. He's amazing, like brilliant, and he taught me kind of my steam bending kind of forms and stuff, which
sounds like a special power.
It's amazing. It is amazing. If you ever get a chance, have a look online at bending wood, and you essentially heat it, and the science, like the actual structure of the wood changes. Yeah, you only have a couple of minutes at most to actually bend it into another shape, but it becomes really elastic, so it actually changes the structure. So he's kind of taught me that side of it, and actually that side of it, once you get it, it's kind of relatively easy to get. But actually, I think, and I've said this to him a few times via messages and things, I think he changed me, the way I looked at my practice quite a lot, just by saying a couple of things about like vulnerability and connecting what you work emotionally and things like that. And I think because if you look at my work, it's quite structured and very clean. And I was approaching it in a very clean, structured way, and I was really winding myself up if something was not perfect, which you look at from more the crafts person kind of way. Whereas actually artistically, my practice is kind of going in the way in the direction of it being slightly dirtier and a bit more decayed and using not quirkier shapes, it's still quite blocky. But the quirkier grains of wood, and I'm actually working with more natural leather now, and actually developing processes of making it look like it's been around for decades and being used and things like that. So it's great. It's been amazing. And then I have other mentors as well. So I've got somebody who is a wood marquetry master, going to a furniture school, and also there's a couple called Ash and Plum, and they are wood turners, and I did some work with them about patinations and aging materials and things like that. It's great. I've been very busy. It's been really busy, but as I say, it has changed my practice completely.
And you kind of touched on something just then about kind of feeling vulnerable, and then the other side being very kind of structured and formulaic. Do you allow yourself to kind of feel exposed within your practice?
I am now, and it's been a bit of a weird one. You'll understand this. I think because I've got a bit of a weird. I didn't have a great upbringing. And when you go to hairdressing, you're kind of taught quite early on that you don't bring your problems into work. Everyone has a good old gossip in the back, but you don't bring your problems into work. You have
not
show
on the
face.
salon floor.
No, you have show face on all the time, and I think I didn't realise how much that had carried across to my whole approach to how I was creating my work.
So, do you think that you were creating something that people wanted to see, or rather than something that
not
you
so
wanted
much.
people
Not
to see of you?
I mean, possibly, but I think it had to be perfect, and it had to be, every angle had to be perfect, and each piece of leather couldn't have a mark on it at all, and the wood had to, if it wasn't exactly the way I wanted it to be, it was gone. And that's changed quite a lot now. I'm actually purposefully making things
flawed.
Yeah, we all are.
Yes,
we all are. And it's actually, I think it's made me beat myself up less when I'm creating, because I'm actually letting it out there. I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was about drawing from, the only thing you can do really is draw from your history and your experience to put that into your work. And even though I am that cheery, kind of bouncy kind of guy, I have had quite a tough life. And that, once I started channeling that into my work and kind of not focusing on that, but allowing that to kind of come through, it's changed the way I look at my work quite a lot.
And so, from, how do you, or what's your kind of conceptual process? Because obviously, when you look at a painting, for example, you can quite often see
where it comes from.
Or, when you see sculpture, you can quite often see where it comes from, if it is in a figurative or a form that makes sense. With your work, it is very formulaic and precise, like the precision, like surgical precision.
Yeah,
and to somebody that encounters your work, obviously it's very subjective and they can make what they want from it, but if they do want to know, like, what's the process in terms of concept and
so
choosing the colours, choosing the textures.
Yeah, I kind of thought about this quite a lot, and it's quite intuitive. So for me, it's always been about what these colours and textures. So I use the grain. I use the grain in the wood quite a lot to bring expression to the pieces. And again, as my work's changing, that's kind of coming out more. But for me, when I see these colours, they mean something to me. So if you have a combination of greens and browns and reds and things lot of my work previously has come from my love of nature, about how nature can make you feel. On the side, a few years ago, I did a degree in psychology as well. I know, I've done it all. And part-time, never quite got to the end, but I did 5 years. And one of my years, I kind of got introduced to biophilic design and how material and texture and colour can affect your psychology and your having it in your spaces and things like that. It can really affect your actual physicality and how your body is, whether it calms it down, your heart rate and things like that. I became absolutely fascinated with that, and that's when my work it never took that figurative form, because for me, I really had this connection to how colour and material particularly, but colour and material and texture can affect everyone in completely different ways, and therefore my hope is that whoever is viewing them will pick their own, or get their own narrative from it, because each person will connect to pink differently. Some people will hate it, some people will love it.
Well, it makes sense, like grey sky, grey mood, bright sky, bright mood. It's, it's not rocket science, and it can really influence somebody's mood and attitude by presenting them with
you really
or
can.
putting them in a scenario or situation where,
and also the materials as well. I mean, leather and wood traditionally are someone was saying it. Leather and wood traditionally are materials that you want to get in there and touch. We've all grown up with them. They've all, whether you have a conscious kind of opinion of leather or wood, you've grown up with it. So it's always been there. So it actually makes you want to get in there and kind of connect to the piece in a different way.
They are very tactile materials. It's not like concrete where you wouldn't necessarily experience it in a tactile way, either in floor or ceiling, whereas leather or wood, it's like a leather jacket, a wooden chair, a banister,
very
all
much.
those things.
Yeah, I mean, also in terms of art that you hang on your walls, there isn't a huge amount of art that makes you want to get up and stroke it. And I find that whenever I've done shows and things like that, you can see people trying to hold themselves off, which is great. Once it's yours, you can touch it as much as you want. But it adds another element to connecting to a piece of art that you have in your space. It's supposed to be with you for a while, and every bit of art is personal to whoever has kind of acquired that.
And so obviously with your many acquired skills,
all of them,
and new skills that you are currently acquiring within your studio, do you feel like you're obviously in a very good place? I feel like you're in a good place.
Mentally, I'm in a great place.
And, does that mean that you're going to be producing a different type of work?
Very much, yeah. I mean, so I've got a couple of shows coming up. I'm doing Collect at Somerset House. I'm doing London Craft Week later on in the year as well. But
and Collect is for people that don't know, is a very kind of high-end, prestigious.
It's like art, craft. You get a lot of furniture, jewellery. It's amazing.
And do you have to be selected for that, or do you submit to be part of that?
So a lot of it is gallery based. So
you're taken.
Yeah, you're taken. So I'm presenting there with Quest, so with the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust, because obviously I was one of their scholars this year. But yeah, it's an amazing show. So once I've got the work for that out of the way, my next lot of work, which I'm already starting to work on materials and testing and all that sort of stuff, will be very different.
What can we expect to see?
Dirty. It's going to get dirty.
In terms of kind of not having such a polished finish and
Yeah, I feel
kind of movement to it.
Yeah,
quite so.
there's still very much a place for, and as you say earlier, it might be a slight PhD type thing in that.
Then you might be somewhere, just somewhere on that spectrum.
Yeah,
and look, embrace it.
I
It's
know, I actually
working
said
for
do
you.
it. It's done all right. But I love my block work. I love that it's not a figurative image. I don't want to kind of move into that. But I think there will be less in terms of the amount of blocks, but it will be focusing more on the materials and how those materials work together. So rather than using pristine wood, I'm working on using more traditional woods like oak and things like that, but aging them in a way that they could have been around for hundreds of years.
And do you try and sort? I'm not trying to catch you out here, but do you try and source things sustainably? Is that part of your sourcing process?
100%. So my leather, as much as I can, I tend to buy leather that is post-production from fashion brands, basically. So it's been created for a collection, and then once the collection's finished, it goes off and sits in a warehouse, or it's been overproduced and there's too much of it, basically.
So you might get a bit, cheeky little away mini skirt.
I couldn't say. Couldn't say. But yeah, it's as much as I can, I will get material that is already out there.
Yeah.
If you're creating a piece for somebody's home and they specifically say, "Oh, I want there to be turquoise in there," and you can't get that, then you would have to go out and buy a turquoise.
And the same as the wood.
And the same as the wood. So
organisations.
yeah. So the wood, I'm using some wood at the moment, which eBay is quite a good one for veneers and things like that, because people sell us stuff that they find at home and things like that, and quite often you'll find people. Some wood I'm using at the moment is from an old cabinet maker's that shut down years ago and it's been in storage for like decades. So it's really old wood that's just been sitting around.
Yeah.
And I bought it and it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And because of the way that I work as well, I can actually use quite small pieces. So I can use offcuts from cabinet makers and things like that. And I can source, there's a lot of cabinet makers that sell off their offcuts basically. So I source those and buy those up. And quite often they're the more interesting ones as well, because sometimes they're offcuts because it's like damaged or a bit quirky.
Have you ever had any real disasters when making stuff?
Of course.
This is going to be great, and then you look at it and you think, what the is that?
Yeah. Most of those are hanging in my home. So, there's a lot of
proud reminders of what never to make again.
Cover them up. Yeah, of course. And wood and leather they're not traditionally used together in the way that I use them. And so, as I say, I have created processes to mean I can combine them. But they both react completely differently as a material as well. So once you've committed to getting it on the board, that's it. It's done. It's glued on there. Once it's glued on there, it's really hard to get it off. And when wood's drying, it can crack. And whilst you're working with it, if it gets wet, it can expand or it can crack. So you have to really know your materials. And actually, at the beginning, when I first started doing this, I try and use as many different species of wood and things like that as I could, or whatever I was getting my hands on. And they all react completely differently. And you kind of can get to the end of a piece that you spend weeks doing and try and finish it, and then it doesn't want to finish, or like it hasn't glued properly, or it quite often happens. But then that's craft.
All part of the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not something I can paint over. So once it's done, it's done. So.
And so would you consider, because I speak to quite a lot of people, like I'm not anything to do with craft, I'm an artist, I'm not a craftsman, this, that, there's something can be quite a bit of a stigma attached to craft.
I'm going to be careful what I
It's a
say.
bit agricultural, as I've heard it referred to before.
But it's not. I mean, I think craft had some people can view craft as more of a functional creativity, but it's not. I mean, art and craft have been interchangeable for centuries. Like it's, as I say, going back to Teaching the Moon. If you look at every single piece of craft that was in there, it's 100% a piece of art in itself.
Good answer.
There we go. But yeah, I mean, you look at there's some amazing craftspeople out there, and there's a lot of craft at the moment which isn't massively functional, but it's beautiful. But even some of the functional stuff, some of it's quite grotesque, but grotesque in a really amazing ways. And I don't think you would get that from agricultural crafts. But yeah, I'm very much of the frame of mind that it is interchangeable. It's you can definitely look at a chair, and to one person it's a chair, and to another person it's the best piece of art ever. No one will ever sit on it. So it's all in the eye of the beholder.
Yes. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing more of you. Seeing the dirty stuff, getting mucky, you know, and having it on the walls here with us at the dawn. I'm super excited for you and the year you've got ahead. Sounds like you've got plenty to be getting on with, which you will absolutely embrace, I am sure. Thank you for being here and for kind of sharing everything with us. But before we go, I'm going to do what I do usually, play a stupid game.
Lovely.
It's a word association game. You know what this is all about, don't you? So I'm going to say a word to you. You've got to reply to me with a word that is associated with it, and we're going to see. We're going to rally and see who. See who falls. It's usually me. I'm happy to instigate it, but I'm crap at it. So I am going to start with wood.
Table.
Leg.
Pyro.
Hook.
Peter Pan.
Wendy.
Burger.
Hungry.
Hippo.
Fuck it, I told you I'll get to it. Well done.
That's how my brain works. I'm sure that wasn't
Thank
normal.
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure.
That's been great. Thank you for letting me babble.
That's what this is all about.
Yes.
Letting you babble. after.
Oh, that's
She
lovely.
was just like,